Welcome to Getting Defensive Weekend Primer presented by Gridiron Ratings. I'm your host, JJ Wenner, and tonight we take a look at the Week 10 matchups and all the news you need. With me is Gridiron Ratings Senior IDP Analyst. You can find him on Twitter at the IDP Tipster. Gary Van Dyke, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I hope everybody else is having a good time. Getting ready to hit this Week 10.
Week 10 double digits. Also with us is our returning champion. You won again last week in my absence. This is an amazing streak. You can find him on Twitter at Dynasty Tripp. Tripp Brebner. What's going on, buddy?
Doing well, man. It's the dog days of the season. All kinds of crazy injury replacements, no-name players, even at the quarterback position. So that's why we're here.
It is going to be a crazy couple weeks. Well, gentlemen, let's get to it. Kicking off our afternoon slate, the Atlanta Falcons are visiting the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Gary, you started to talk about this before the pod, and I told you not to.
Yes.
But Randy Gregory is expected to miss multiple weeks. What does this mean for the Dallas defensive line? Is Parsons going to kick back down the DN Trip?
You know, it's hard to say. I predicted that he would not last time, or I certainly predicted that he'd only be able to spot opportunities in that edge, and then he was a full-blown defensive end. Well, the differences this time are that Jalen Smith and Jabril Cox are gone, Cox being on IR. And so they don't really quite have the depth to do what they did before, because last time Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch were playing the vast majority of snaps, and then they had Neal in there. So I think this time they got these younger guys like Dorrance Armstrong and Chauncey Golston and whatnot, and with as well as that Parsons has been playing, and not that he was playing poorly at edge, he certainly was playing well. I'd be surprised if they took him out of that. I mean, I think he's been great switching back and forth and keeping folks guessing, and I think that makes their defense better, quite honestly. So that's what I'd look for. But like I said, I was wrong last time, so we'll see this time.
Gary, you on board with that? Part-time dropping down?
Only thing I'm really on board with is I'm avoiding anything until I see, something. I mean, I feel bad. Gregory had a great matchup this weekend against the Falcons. This same great matchup, I can't suggest any of the defensive linemen for Dallas in IDP play. And this is like super deep and only based off the idea that it's a really good matchup on the inside. So I just DeMarcus Lawrence, is he ever coming off IR? They could really stand to have him and Gregory here in a few weeks before they, make a playoff run or whatever they're doing. I'm not really interested in this situation just for the fact that I don't feel like that there's going to be any real IDP production to depend on. History shows there's usually not, except for those handful of ends. Lawrence, Gregory. Last year it was Smith, I think. Who they had last year? Tripp.
They had Alden Smith, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then he phased off. So I'm not really interested in any of these personally.
Anybody on Atlanta worth starting Trip this week?
Get my stuff back out.
I got one.
The one that struck out me is Eric Harris, the safety. He's been quietly having a good season. And
I had one.
Go ahead, Bone.
Go ahead.
Well, he's a bigger guy. It fits the bill of that strong safety mold, and has been making some tackles and has been pretty effective playing for Atlanta. It's a little bit surprising to everybody that he was able to stave off Richie Grant, but that's most certainly happened. Grant is playing slot when he's out there. It doesn't seem to be a threat at all to Harris. And so Harris is good this week. Cowboys give up a good number of points to opposing safety positions. And that's a guy that there's a whole lot of interesting streaming options at the safety position this week. And this guy's just one of them. So there's no reason not to get points to safety this week for IDP gamers.
All right, well, let's swing down to Jacksonville, going to Indianapolis Colts. Now, Miles Jack has missed back-to-back practices. If he doesn't play on Sunday, who gets the bump? Is it Dakota Allen?
I wouldn't go there. I mean, more likely, yeah, but man, I know it's a thin week, folks, but that would be a deep production by default. Can't say it wouldn't be a high end matchup for him to get some production, but I mean, I would hope that unless you're in the deepest of leagues, you've got some better options. I look at somebody like Josh Bynes. Even Bynes has got a really good matchup, and he's actually probably on some waiver wires. But oops, I guess he gets the bump by default. Yes, I just don't necessarily know if I'd go there.
Well, Tripp, with the Jags coming to town, I'm assuming I should fire up some Colts, probably in the secondary. Who are you starting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Jags are real pass happy this year, and we'll see if they have James Robinson back or not. But regardless, it doesn't seem to be slowing down their efforts to get the ball downfield. And the big name at corner, which is probably not available in a ton of waiver wires because he's consistently productive player, is Kenny Moore. And so this is just an opportunity for him to pile up stats this week. But the sleeper out here is George Odom, the safety. He's taken over for Kari Willis, who's on IR, and played a fair amount of two deep last week against the Jets because the Jets were in catch-up mode most of the game. But more typically, the Colts play a fair amount of safety in the box, and they typically show a preference for one versus the other. And the opposite safety right now, the free safety, is Andrew Sendejo, and he's been a deep guy for most of his career, I believe, and so not very effective at it, but he seems to find homes around the league here and there for the last few years. And here he is in Indy now, replacing Julian Blackman, and Odom replacing Kari Willis is the guy that folks want to take a look at if they need help at safety.
Is Willis out for the year?
I don't think so.
No, I think he's on his second or third week. They're going to be out 3 weeks. I think he's on his second or third. I can't remember. No, matter of fact, no. It's this is his second. Odom, to me, I mean, he overachieved last week. He is a very interesting player, though. Jacksonville doesn't allow a lot to the safety, which, as you mentioned, they do in the box area. So he should have a solid enough outing. I wanted to mention, too, I didn't get a chance since Eric Harris got away from me, but, hey, folks, you guys have been enjoying Jarrett Grady for Atlanta. He's still got a really solid matchup this week against Dallas. I've been suggesting him for like the last 2 to 3 weeks to people, and he started out the season pretty slow, but to his defense, it actually wasn't the best matchups on paper the entire time that he wasn't producing, but he's had those the last 2 weeks, and he's got another one this week against Dallas. So, I mean, if you're looking for a DT play, you're probably looking at that 4 combined tackle. Possibly, he might be able to get Zeke in the backfield or something, Pollard. So he might have a tackle for a loss. I kind of doubt a sack.
With Grady Jarrett, I know in the beginning of the season he was playing more on the edge than inside. Has he gone back to inside? Is that why he's putting up stats again?
No. It wouldn't matter. He's the best dude on there. They're going to double team him because the rest of that line is so lackluster. It doesn't matter where you put him. And at least according from what I've seen, I mean, he's back on the inside, and he's matched up exactly right with the MSRs on the inside for the last 3 weeks. So I just assumed that. Either way, Dallas, the only thing that Dallas won't do is allow a lot off the end. So, but as far as I know, they're actually, aren't they playing a 4-3 type defense now, where they actually have outside linebackers? So I couldn't imagine if he's playing defensive end in a 4-3, if I'm correct. Is that correct, Tripp?
I think they're more of a 3-4 based defense, to be honest with you.
3-4, right, with outside linebackers. My bad. Yeah, right. So if he was playing a defensive end in that scheme, that's still an interior defensive lineman. Because you got 2 standing outside linebacker rushing, then you got 3 inside. So it will. So it really doesn't matter. It depends how you look at it. It's still interior defensive line. It's not off the edge. And
I was just asking schematically if that was the reason for the improvement.
No, I truly believe, even Aaron Donald can get shut down, and Grady Jarrett's in a bad situation where he's a beast. He is really a beast. But when you didn't have any help whatsoever around him, he's always double teamed. That's who they make sure that they take care of. They go up against him, and just on paper, looking back at the prior season, his matchups weren't good at the beginning of the season. Teams that he played at the beginning of the season right now are still not allowing a lot of points to the interior defensive lineman. Let me put it that way. But then all of a sudden, Jarrett got favorable matchups with teams that do allow a lot of, whether they're running the ball or if their offensive line just stinks, whichever it is. So, yeah.
All right, let's not turn this into a DT show, though.
Right.
I mean, that's worse than a Dirty O show, buddy.
Originally, we were talking about Indianapolis, right?
We're going to go up to New England right now.
Yeah, I have a lot of trust issues when it comes to Odom, just based off his history in the past. Look back to Indianapolis.
Did he hurt you at some point? Like,
no, if you look at his,
were you dating? Like,
year,
what do you mean he hurt you?
Okay, if you look at last year's when he got a chance to play, he'll have a good game, and then the next couple of starts he's flat on his face. So just because he's in a production, he's in a situation right now where he should be productive. I'd like to see it more than just one weekend. And by the time he gains my trust, Willis will be back.
Wow. So, looks like you and Odom need some couples counseling.
Well, just look at last year's. He was undependable. You think you had him, you go and you play him, and then he bombed.
Tell it to the therapist. Yeah. All right. The Browns are visiting. I am not your therapist. Dear Lord, you don't pay me, and you don't pay me enough for that. But if I may, the Browns are going to New England. Now the Joker is back for Cleveland. Tripp, what do you see his role versus Walker? Is like he going to come right back to where he was?
I wouldn't be eager to trot him out there this week against Patriots. Not loving the production that they're giving up to the linebacker position, and then we got Anthony Walker back, and Anthony Walker's been the full-time guy, right? I mean, that's last time, and I wasn't sure he would be, but then Jacob Phillips got hurt in the preseason, and so it was a slam dunk after that. And Walker's been very productive. He's soaking up tackles. And the last time we saw JOK on the field, I think it was before Walker came back, or before he was full strength anyhow. And JOK played 91% of the snaps, but I wouldn't count on him to storm back into that kind of role right out the gate. So he's a guy that I would sit on and wait and see how he meshes with Anthony Walker back. The other thing is it could be like an Isaiah Simmons situation, where he's playing a lot of different roles. And so it might be that, he's not going to be seeing as many in the box snaps. So we'll see how that affects him here. But I would give it a week to see how it plays out before I trotted him back out there.
Gary, now Myles Garrett has missed 2 straight practices again with his foot. Should we expect him to play through it this week like he did last week?
Oh yeah, I would say so. If we haven't heard of an actual setback, so he's got a solid matchup this week. So you can't sit Garrett. He's one of the only guys right now that's sit and forget.
All right, well, let's go to the Jets. Tremaine Edmonds has missed back-to-back practices with a hamstring injury. Who gets the bump if he misses Sunday, Tripp?
Sorry, which player's going out with a hamstring injury?
Tremaine Edmonds has missed back-to-back practices.
Really? Oh, crap. I'm sorry. I missed that one. So that's no good.
It's not. Do you think Milano picks up the slack? What happens when Edmond generally goes out?
Yeah, Milano's more of the coverage guy, so they need that run stuffer than the middle. And I think I want to say AJ Klein has been that in a couple of times in the past, but that's also when Milano's been hurt as the Klein's taken over. So that's, I guess, off the cuff there. And that's who I would look to take a look at. What you got?
Yeah, Klein's going to step in. Always does. Always does.
Well,
history repeats itself. Klein is definitely the third best linebacker, and he's completely capable of running that middle inside linebacker position. You can't move Milano over there. He's too brittle.
So, Gary, I've been pretty patient with Jarrett Davis, only because you are a believer.
I had this conversation on Tuesday, and I made a statement over the weekend and on Twitter. Jarrett Davis is on my bench one more week. If he doesn't produce compared to his production, at least in some combined tackles, I'm done with him. I'm not holding my breath for him. We're getting into this part of the season. Sometimes these things don't work out. So he's got the snap counts. He just needs to start producing. It looks like he's like a half a step behind everything, where somebody else is just beating him to the tackle. So, but three weeks in a row, I'll just wash my hands. There's too many other little options out there right now that's probably going to produce pretty well. And I really don't think in this situation that even if Jarrett Davis did start producing, that he's ever going to produce like what Quincy Williams was with the full-time role. He'll never probably be that type dude. He probably be more of an upper linebacker 2 at this point with the way that Mosley's playing. So there's nothing that I can't let Jarrett Davis go and probably go get off the waiver wire right now and replace it in a lot of leagues.
Now, Tripp, with Marcus May going on IR with an Achilles, who is going to step up and get those snaps?
Well, that's a tough question. But my suspicion is that Ashton Davis will stay out there and play more of a deep role, and that they'll bring in Sherrod Niesman to come in. And that's what they did last week. They could certainly flip that this week. They could decide that Niesman is the preferred deep safety. But last week, when Marcus May got hurt, it was Niesman that came in and played in the box, which is slightly surprising because Niesman in previous games had played deep. So it's quite possible that they could flip those two guys and then reverse in the opposite direction. But Niesman is pretty interesting if he is in that attacking safety role the Jets have been playing this season. So it's one of several names at the safety position that's just kind of worth the flyer to see what you get out of him, along with Odom and Harris and some of these other guys we've been talking about. So no shortage.
I added Tripp. I want to ask you. I added Carter to my waiver wire pickups. I think both him and Davis or Neeson. Whoever's in on this deal, I mean, the Patriots are a really good matchup for safeties, and considering the line that the Jets got, I'm sorry there, JJ, but considering the line that they have, I can imagine that the safeties are all going to be busy. What do you think about Carter? He's been getting the snaps.
He's playing corner.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, he's playing corner.
I have him down. I apologize. Well, okay. Well, then I recommended it probably a good corner play, I hope.
He is listed as safety.
Because on Fantasy Data, my resource, or Fantasy Data is a paid thing. We get our stuff. He's marked as a safety. So
he is listed as a safety, but he's been playing corner.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Maybe more specifically,
watch more Jets
PFF.
film and pay attention to corners.
Just looking at PFF, he's primarily a slot defender. So I guess that's a gray area between corner and safety, if you will.
All right. Well, either way, what do you think about it? Should still be a good matchup this weekend against New England?
Well, I like these two safeties. I'd roll out there. I'd take a chance.
What about Carter? I'm asking him, would you play Carter?
No, probably not.
Okay.
I've never. If it's it's rare that I want to look at a guy who's playing in this slot who's part time. I don't think he's a full time guy.
He's 74%.
Yeah.
So that's just As I don't see it, he doesn't have it. I'm looking at his pass rush snaps now. He has 18 pass rushes on the year. That's not that interesting. So probably not a guy I'd be eager to trot out there, but not awful.
All right. Wow. Well, I put like almost 30 people on the waiver wire, so he is a depth. This is deep. So I hope, folks, that he is going to do well, because in week 8 he played 92%, and week 7 he played 77.6%. So I think his count went up after May went out. But I got him in a couple of mine. I like the matchup. It feels right. And I've got some deep leagues I need to try him in. So, and I missed out on Davis, which would have been the first guy I got up here. I don't think I'm going to go for Neeson.
Who was talking about Davis like 4 weeks ago?
Yeah. No. They really should have probably had him out there. It's not like they should probably. I think you guys got the most rookies starting on your defensive secondary or the whole defense or something.
Probably on our whole team.
Yeah, but probably should have just started out that way. We should have traded May. Got some stock for him.
Well, whatever. It happens. What are you gonna do?
Don't get all upset.
I'm not upset.
Talk to me about that.
I'm a Jets fan. Listen, you're still going to couples counseling with George Odom. Let's go to Pittsburgh and talk about the matchup between the Lions and the Steelers. Now, both the Lions and Steelers are in the top 4 of giving up points to linebackers. So are we playing every single linebacker we have? This game,
I wanted to talk about Alex Angelo, because I thought he'd have a better season by now, but so did a lot of people that picked him up. So he's on a lot of waiver wires, folks. This is a really good matchup this week for him. I don't expect him to go out and make an interception and run it back for a touchdown or a bunch of passes defended or anything, but I do think you can get a nice floor of about 7 or 8 combined tackles in this contest. Now, there's 4 teams on bye. So, and we're also talking about deep leagues, folks. Don't do this in some shallow league where you probably have better options. But, it was another interesting fact. Just looking back on his season, I'm like, what happened? What's going on with him? Because he's had like 1, maybe 2 games that were really good. Or he had 1 really good game, 1 decent game, and the rest have been down. Folks, as it stands right now, on paper, all the teams that he played up to this point, only 2 of them had favorable matchups. The rest of them are all down in the bottom third in matchups for inside linebackers. And you got Reeves sitting there, Maven Reeves getting his share for the last couple of weeks. Alex Angelo was thrusted from a rotational part-time job with the New Orleans Saints to running a defense in Detroit. This guy is not a super stud. So I think it's been a combination of, he's running the defense, making sure that the guys are all where they're supposed to be according to this scheme that they pretty well brought from New Orleans, because the DC is actually New Orleans ex-cornerbacks coach, I believe, something along that line. But either way, the coach, Lions head coach, brought him with him from New Orleans. But either way, I like Angelo. I think you can get a little bit out of him. Again, this is going to be one of those deeper leagues, though. The rest of the linebackers, I mean, you've got to start Bush. You've got to start Schobert, right? And I mean, in real deep leagues, he's probably a good, decent start there as a LB4, possibly. What do you think, Tripp?
Schobert? Yeah, I'd be comfortable rolling him out there as a LB3, LB4 type for sure.
Anybody else you're looking at in this matchup, Tripp?
I kind of like Alex Highsmith out here. He's been a bit quiet for a couple weeks here, but it'll be interesting to see which Lions offense shows up. The offense that's kind of dinked and dunked and made their way down the field some, or the offense that just looks like it's a Zach Wilson or Justin Fields offense. I just they've had some real stinkers out there where it's been bad, and so. But that being said, is that Jared Goff has had a couple weeks where he's just gotten crushed by the pass rush and just looked like a deer in headlights. And so TJ Watt did all the damage last week. Maybe the Lions' offensive line focuses on him a little bit more and maybe frees Highsmith up. So he's a guy I'd take a shot at, especially in leagues where you require an edge defender. And speaking of tackles, the Pittsburgh outside linebackers do some tackling. So Smith might get a few pieces of that.
I have a stat correction on myself. I said Jets were playing New England. Why did you correct me to Buffalo? Still a great matchup, folks. Don't forget what I said. Looking at it. I'm looking at it. I'm sorry. I'm editing myself. I do need therapy. I do. I really do.
A little bit, Gary. A little bit. Well, let's go down to the Titans. The Saints are heading down there. I'm happy to have Marcus Davenport playing well the past 2 weeks. Tripp, can I expect this to continue? Is he back? Is he a must start every week now?
Well, expect is a strong word, but it's this guy that may finally be figuring things out. He could be that year 4 breakout like Eric Armstead was a couple years ago, and maybe it's happening. Yeah, that's all these defenses or offensive lines put so much focus on stopping Cameron Jordan, and it's freed somebody up. I think I saw recently even Tano Castagnone had like a fair amount of stats being playing opposite Jordan while Davenport was hurt. So yeah, I think get Davenport back out there, give him a shot against Tennessee. Tannehill tends to hold the ball a little bit. They don't have Derrick Henry to scare off that keep everybody honest. So yeah, I tried Davenport out there this week.
Now on the opposite side of the ball, Harold Landry has missed back-to-back practices with a hamstring. Gary, what's the backup plan if he misses Sunday?
Look elsewhere for edge rushers and outside linebackers because Bud Dupree and the other guy they're not going to get it done. It's actually just a solid matchup. If your name is Landry, it is just a serviceable one. If it's Dupree, Dupree is still clearly not recovered from his injury from last year. He's been struggling all year, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Something. I can't. Don't go look. If Landry's out, don't look for his backups to get the job done for you.
Now, if you're a stat gazer, you might be excited over Kevin Byard's big week last week. But Tripp, I shouldn't start him, right?
It's tough to sit a guy like that, but I'd be tempted to in this matchup. The Saints are trying to slow the game down. They don't want to play a lot of snaps. And Byard, even though he had a pick 6 last week, so that makes everybody happy. If you're in a balanced or a big play scoring league, it's 10 points. But he only had 3 assists. That was all he did on the tackle sheet. And he's kind of a boom-bust tackle guy. He has this name brand value in IDP because he had a bunch of interceptions, I think, in 2018. He hasn't been the leading scorer on his own defensive backfield in IDP in the last couple of years. It was slot corners, or it was Malcolm Butler last year and Logan Ryan the year before that. And so I'm always interested that people think so highly of this guy from an IDP asset. That said, he is playing better this year. He's creating more big plays. And so if you're in a big play scoring league, you roll with him. But if you're in a league where you're looking and requiring needing tackles to make that work, you'd be tempted to look at your options there.
Preach it, Tripp. Man, I love it. Yeah. I couldn't understand it about Barrett either. I mean, the writing was on the wall. I think 50% of his production that one year was all made by playmaking ability plays like interceptions, passes defended, fumble recovery, all that. You can't count on that, folks. So and free safety is one of the worst ones at that. We could take a few players, for example, this year that's had favorable matchups that has worked for them. But when it comes to Beard, I think it was last year or the year before, 2019, I rank. We all rank. I hate ranking. I only usually rank like 3 or 4 times a year because I go for more than matchup start sits on the inside of the season. But I had him outside of my top 32 and in like 2019, and I got the worst hate. It was a year after he actually went off that he had all those interceptions and stuff. I can't remember if it was 2018 or 19. But either way, they were killing me on this. And I was like, look, man, and I said exactly what Tripp just said. That's really what it boils down to. Those free safeties, most of them do not get the base combined tackles if they're any good. Most of them, it's going to depend on some interceptions or just this backup. Either that or the guys in front of them really stink. We do have a few exceptions going on, but it's hard to repeat that from year to year. There were a few free safeties last year that turned around and they got like a 20-25% bump in combined tackles, making them look real nice and shiny coming into this year. Now look what's happened to Bates. Look what's happened to Justin Smith. Look what's happened to help me out, Tripp. There was a few free safeties last year that just really shined that aren't getting it done. Everybody thought Darnell Savage was getting ready to kick ass. He got a bump. But he's doing okay. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying all of a sudden the following year the ADP is going crazy on him, and so is the ranking. It's tough, folks, when it's a free safety.
I saw something interesting on the Bird app today, and it showed a PFF stat, and what it said was consistency by position year over year in grade, and the highest, and the defense was generally lower than the offense, which I thought was interesting. And of the defense, the most consistent players in terms of performance grade by PFF grade were the defensive linemen, and the defensive backs were the worst. And it'd be interesting to break down what the reasons were for that. But you think about guys like Eddie Jackson and Minka Fitzpatrick and these guys that look great one year, they just don't look the same the next year, and it's hard to understand why. It makes you wonder if there's a causation issue, right? Because maybe they gave Eddie Jackson high grades because he had a bunch of picks.
No.
I thought he was good, so I'm not saying that's it, but it seems like that. A lot of these guys that are reliant on the big play to rank highly in fantasy are just really hard pressed to repeat it.
And you can't hit that home with it. It's unfortunate you can't hit that home talking amongst people like right now. Like I said, unfortunately, because of the hype, I don't know if it's pressure or what, but the following year, if a free safety does something like what they do, then all of a sudden they went up the board 20 spots in the following year's ADP and rankings. And you just don't understand. It's terrible. It's hard. And in matchups matter each year, and matchups and schedules change each year. Teams change philosophies, new coaches, new everything. So it's just everything is against that. That's actually why you can get a lot more consistency out of a strong safety. I would have to think if we broke down the defensive back, like he was talking about with the PFF saying it was the most inconsistent, I would say the one position that I think that you could say was going to be the most consistent out of the defensive back area would be the strong safety. In my experience in the past, when it comes to combined tackles, which is your base scoring that you don't want to depend on those interceptions. That's all bonus. That's luxury points. If you can find a player that's good at it, that's great. But you will find players that are good at it for a year. The next year, it just doesn't happen. It's like hitting a lottery, But strong safeties are a little bit more consistency in scoring, I believe.
All right. Well, Tampa Bay is going to visit the Washington football team. Now, I hope you both noticed how my motivational ploy worked. 2 weeks ago, I asked if we should drop JPP because of poor play. Well, call me Matt Foley because JPP responded with his best game of the year. Now, I'm assuming we're starting all of our bucks against the football team, Tripp.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the thing about the Bucks and the consistency of usage. You know that what you're going to get from Barrett and JPP and White and David in terms of a deployment. So yeah, you go ahead and stick those guys out there. On the Bucks, on the Washington team, it's a little more interesting. One guy that appeals to me is Kendall Fuller. Early on in the season, he was playing a fair amount of slot, and the third cornerback was Benjamin St-Juste, a rookie, and he would come out, and that would afford Fuller the opportunity to just kick inside. Well, William Jackson has been hurt last 3 or 4 weeks, and so Fuller's been playing strictly outside. He'll be back in the slot this week, I believe. I think Jackson and St-Juste will both play, and so Fuller will get a couple of pass rush opportunities. He'll be close to the ball, and the Bucs like to throw the ball to the middle of the field too. So with Tom Brady, of course. So that's an interesting guy.
Nothing, Gary? Nope.
Right. Yeah. The only ones I'm not starting for Tampa Bay, I'll even start Jordan Whitehead this week in a deeper format. But yeah, I'm starting everybody except for the interior defensive lineman. Shaq Barrett and JPP, they're going to have fun this week again. So when it comes to White and David, they're going to be what they've been all year, which basically is not top end LB1s anymore. So whatever's changed, there's another example. White got all kinds of interceptions and sacks and tackles for loss last year. They're not rushing them, and he's not getting those this year. So our number one overall consensus LB1 coming into this year by probably most of everybody, even over Leonard Yes, Darius Leonard. White was ranked number one in a lot of things, and now he's outside the top 32 in top production in NFL, or not in NFL, but IDP altogether by his average. Either way, I am starting everybody except for the interior defensive lineman for Tampa Bay.
All right. Well, that finishes up our 1 p.m. slate.
I would like to add one more. Folks, if you've got somebody else besides Chase Young that you can play as a defensive lineman or an edge rusher, if you've got, say, a second-tier guy with a strong matchup, go ahead and play him over Chase Young this week. They protect Brady. There's two teams that astonish me. Tampa Bay don't allow much off the interior or the edge of the defensive line. They're in the bottom third in both categories. I'm sure somebody could correct me, but I'm going to say that by memory is correct. And so is Jacksonville, believe it or not. Jacksonville just died. So I'm going to suggest this. Buckner and Chase Young, if you've got another player at their level, their talent, their ADP, their value, and they have a little bit solid or just a shiny matchup, I played them over over Chase Young and Buckner this week. I would sit Chase Young and play a defensive tackle I just do not like this matchup for him at all. And I just wanted to throw that in there. I told the guys before we started that I said, hey, man, I'm going to be hating on some players. So I just want to make sure that I'm going to tell you now, if you're in a deep league, you can't sit those guys. Folks, I'm talking about a shallow type league where you might be sitting on both the Buckner and Young. You can't sit them in deep leagues though. Well, unless you're crazy like me, because I am.
I think it's fair to point out that, if we're recommending X, Y, and Z guys to start, especially if they're no-name guys, it's worth pointing out who's a better known player that you would want to start over. And so, like for me, a guy like that is Jamin Davis this week. I wouldn't be messing with him. We're just still not quite sure what his workload is. It could really tick up. He could be a guy that could be a league winner down the stretch. And so I hope he is. I got him in the spot where I really need him to step up. But this isn't the week to test it out.
No. We're good.
Now on to the afternoon games.
We're good. Rock and roll, man.
Word, more like doo-wop. Carolina Panthers are visiting the Cardinals. Cam is back, baby. Well, maybe not this week, but PJ Walker will probably be starting. Are we firing up all of our Cardinals IDPs, Tripp?
I'd get those pass rushers out there. Was it Marcus Golden showed up with like 3 sacks last week? Man, it's like,
what happened to those guys last week? They had a really strong matchup last week. Who they play? And they flopped, both of them, considerably, considering the matchup. Chandler and Golden.
I think Jones, they played San Francisco and they housed them. And Jones had 1 sack and Golden had 3. And they're playing the Panthers this week. Panthers have not been protecting Darnold. Of course, Darnold's been playing poorly, and so that has a lot to do with it. Quarterback sack is as much a quarterback stat as it is an offensive line stat, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but you roll PJ Walker or Cam Newton out there, I was like, that just doesn't bode well, in my opinion. It's amazing how well the Cardinals defense has played, considering they rolling out a bunch of old guys and cornerbacks nobody's ever heard of, and Malcolm Butler retired before the season started, and it's like, come on, what is happening? And here we are, and we're middle of the season, and Cardinals have one of the best records in the NFL, and Kyler Murray and Nuke Hopkins sit out, and they bulldoze anyway. It's like, well, heck, I've not been much of a believer in Jones much of the season. I think this is only the second or third game he's actually had a sack. But, it's in this matchup, man, I'd try both of those guys out there, especially in leagues where I need an edge-type defender. It's conventional position leagues. We'll see. But pass rushers, yeah, fire them up.
What are the chances that Budda Baker plays this weekend? I know he's missed 2 straight practices, concussion. Probably not good at this point, but anybody hear anything?
I haven't heard
nothing negative.
Not playing, but I think it's always, you don't know anything until Friday or Saturday. It takes that progression through the protocol, and you don't really know until a day.
Now, a few years ago, we could have gave you that answer because we would have had reporters in on practices that would be letting us know what was going on in practices. But because of that new thing that they did in the NFL a couple of years ago, so we don't know no longer, what was that called? We no longer get that type of information because they don't have open practices unless they choose to. But yeah, who knows? I haven't heard anything negative about him though.
Well, speaking of Baker, is an interesting point to what you were saying earlier, Gary, is that Baker has not been as productive as an IDP this year. It's a guy that, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, is this, to me, there are just too many mouths to feed in the box in that spot. But it's just been more of an equal distribution of stats between Jalen Thomas, the free safety, and Budda Baker, the strong safety.
Well, and Jalen Thomas, and we've mentioned it before. I'm not sure if I mentioned it here, but who's seen this guy coming this year? Did you? Jalen Thomas is a strong safety. I mean, he's basically had a breakout season considering, and been a serviceable guy, especially in deeper leagues. But I can't say, you hear a lot of names in the offseason about breakouts and stuff. Jalen Thompson wasn't even a fart in the wind. And here he is. He's just tearing it up.
All right. We're kicking this into overdrive, gentlemen, because we are running long. Minnesota Vikings at LA Chargers. Should I be excited that Cam Bynum has a cornerback designation, Tripp?
No, I'm excited about that because I'm always looking for cornerback to stream. But this is wonderful, man. He had like 10 tackles last week and a couple big plays, and State taking over the Harrison Smith role, and he just came out in 8. And so it's not the world's best matchup for safety, but man, if you got a cornerback designation and you're playing that type of role, you fire that guy up, man.
Yeah, I just picked him up in a couple leagues where it's cornerback required. I love it. Philadelphia Eagles are at the Denver Broncos now. After a few weeks of fluctuating snap counts, TJ Edwards and Davion Taylor emerged. Can I start either of them with confidence, Gary?
In this matchup, I wasn't expecting LB1 type numbers. I think there's a better one. In deeper formats, you just got to start 2 to 3. They'd be my LB2 and a 2 to 3 starting lineup for the linebackers. I put Edwards. Donovan Taylor, no, more of probably like an LB4. I actually do have him in a couple of LB4 spots just because of the bye weeks. He's getting the production. He's not a full-time player. I do believe he got a little bit of a boost last week in snap count, but production by default, deeper leagues. Yeah, I'd play him. I'm scared to death.
Now, Tripp. Denver dominated Dallas despite ditching Von Miller. Is Jonathan Cooper the real deal?
I think he's a pretty attractive player. This isn't where I'd fire him up this week, but the Eagles were throwing the ball about 12 times a game. But I think that generally speaking, I think he's an interesting player. He's a 7th round pick, but he has the athletic profile you're looking for. He comes in, he seems to earn the trust of the team pretty quickly. And it's easy to say, well, they're just throwing towel with trading Von Miller away, but you don't just get rid of Von Miller if you have literally nothing coming back behind him. You got to have functional players on the field. I think John Cooper has been at least that. I think he has some upside. He's a good pickup for dynasty leaguers.
He's got a decent matchup this week too. Actually, very interesting guy. If you didn't catch that, our Craig on Tuesday shows actually dropped his name last week about an interesting guy after Von Miller. So kudos to Craig that was digging deep because I'd never seen Cooper coming.
All right, Seattle Seahawks are going up to the Packers. Now it looks like we're going to get a return of both insufferable quarterbacks, Mr. Unlimited versus Mr. Unvaccinated. Who should we start in this game, Tripp?
Start, man. I'm not. This is going to be one of those games where it has a tendency to be slow paced. I think both teams are among the lowest in the league in terms of snaps per game, and so yes, it'll be a little bit more if Rodgers and Wilson are playing than if it's Geno and Jordan Love. But I'm not eager to play him in tacklers in this. So you got guys like Wagner, you got to start. But outside of that, I'm looking to sit guys, and the guy I'm looking to sit most is Kenny Clark. He has 3 total tackles in the last 3 games combined. He had a big 2-sack outburst on national television against the Bears, and people thought, okay, that's the Kenny Clark we grew to love like 3 or 4 years
The
ago.
matchups have not been there. Matchups have not been there on paper for him. He's been just marked serviceable in my start sit charge for the last 2 weeks. I'm telling you, he is a pure matchup guy. I love Kenny Clark, but the matchup, and he's really the only interior defensive lineman that they have that's worth a shit. Dean Lowry will be productive by default at times, but you're perfect. You're exactly right. He's nowhere near it against Seattle this week.
Now the Chiefs are visiting the Raiders. Is it possible that Denzel Perryman has proven both of you wrong? Should I be starting Denzel Perryman on Sunday night? Gary?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Tripp?
Now I got him in one league, man, because it's so deep I couldn't cut him.
Should I be starting Denzel this weekend, Tripp?
2 thumbs up for Denzel Perryman.
I thought so, gentlemen. All right, Monday night, LA Rams with OBJ now at the San Francisco 49ers. Now, we're a couple weeks removed from Kinlaw's injury. Has the D-line settled down? Do I know what's going on there, Tripp?
Well, it's been interesting news. They got DJ Jones has been the nose tackle there for a while alongside of Kinlaw, and because of some needs there, they've got Contavious Street, who was drafted to be a DM. They got Eric Armstead, who was drafted to play in a defensive end in a 3-4 years ago, and now he's starting to see some snaps on the interior, which is consistent with what you'd expect from a 3-4 end. And they need a guy to come in and be disruptive in the interior and penetrate. And they really haven't had that since Buckner left, because Kinlaw, we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, is more of a raw player and just not able to show that kind of penetration interior. And so I think they're looking for an infusion of that. And considering they picked up Charles Omenihu to play on the edge a little bit more, giving them some flexibility to move some players around. So, unfortunately, they can't change position designations midseason. So you can't start Eric Armstead at the DT required league. So, what are you going to do? But it's an interesting change. And so because of that usage, I would not be eager to start Armstead this week against the Rams, who are hardly not allowing a lot of pressure.
Actually, on paper, for either side, the Rams or the Niners is not great on paper. You got to start Nick Bosa, but I mean the Rams are bottom 3 in allowing points to the defensive tackle. They're in the bottom 10 in allowing points to the edge. San Fran is in the same boat. They are like bottom 5 in defensive tackle.
But not for linebackers.
Now, when it comes to Aaron Donald, if I've got it, he's another one of those guys. I don't like this matchup, folks. I actually would sit him if I've got another player of his caliber that's just got a better looking matchup. It worries me. And Aaron Donald can be shut down. We see it happen. Go look at last year's schedule.
Tripp, with San Francisco's horizontal offense, they give up a lot of points to linebackers. Are we going to start the accounting firm, Ernest Jones and Reader?
Yeah, I'd fire them up. As I said last week, we talked about which one. Like I said, that Jones is locked and loaded, and well, that didn't look so good. But I tried.
He had a stomach flu for 3 days. Didn't even practice, and was put into the game. We talked about this Tuesday. I am not saying put him in your lineup this week if you've got a better play. He is probably all right in deeper leagues, but I don't mean to get defensive about Ernest Jones, but I want to be clear. The guy, Troy Reader, had taken all the snaps running that defense. Don't be surprised. Don't count on it, but don't be surprised if, as long as Ernest is over his bug flu, that he is right back where he was, where he started. Maybe not as spectacular as he did his first week, but I preached it after it happened. You can't expect that out of a rookie to begin with, and then it just happens. He gets a bug or flu or whatever in the stomach. So it's not surprising. And I should have, because I was really pulling for Jones. I was telling people about Jones. Start him. And I was just hoping that bug flu thing was just going away because I didn't stick my foot in my mouth. And I paid for it because he was in my lineups. But folks, don't go dropping him just yet. Let's see what happens. But I'm not playing either one of these dudes this week, to tell you the truth. Personally, that's just a trust issue. Plus, I just happen to have a lot better options.
You and your trust issues. Well, that's the
Yes.
importance of being earnest. We are cutting this one off. Final time for some final thoughts. You can find Tripp at Dynasty Tripp on Twitter. His work is at dynastyfootballfactory.com. Tripp.
This is the time to grind, man. This is the midseason. This is when you got to get those options. I like Aaron Jones okay for guys with buys and injuries, and you scrap it together for a couple weeks until you can get ready for the playoff run. So this is when a lot of games are won and lost by managing the waiver wire, by making some good trades with low cost guys, and so we're here to help.
Absolutely. The OG of IDP can be found at the IDP Tipster on Twitter. Subscribe to Gridiron Ratings for all of his IDP analysis. Gary, any final thoughts?
Hey, we got 4 teams on bye this week. Then we got 2 on the following week. And then 13 and 14, which is when most of the playoffs are starting. We've got 4 each, 13 and 14. So I've been preaching it since I seen this last week. Hey, folks, we've been saying it all the time, me and James on Tuesday. I think we've mentioned it here on Thursday. You got to think ahead, and just follow up what Tripp said. Think ahead, play the waiver wire, be flexible. But when you get to 13 and 14, folks, you better have a good resource or a good habit of finding a player off the waiver wire that's going to be good for more than just one play, because you're probably going to need it. Some waiver wires shut down for playoffs. So it's going to be a real interesting, hopefully.
I mean, aren't most leagues starting their playoffs in week 15 this year?
I don't know. We're starting ours in 14.
Ooh,
I got
with
one
buys?
in 14.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I guess I do too now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Thank you, Tripp. Thank you, Gary, for joining me tonight. Thank you to everybody out there for tuning in. You can catch up on all of our old episodes on Spotify, Apple, and wherever podcasts can be found. And make sure you tune in to our IDP First Take, hosted by Craig Reith and the crew. Remember, your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Have a good night.